Hello, Eugenio. How are you?
Hello, Holger. How are you? I'm well, thank you.
Good to see you. And tell me, where do I reach you currently? Where are you now?
I am now living at home, and home is in a monastery near Andorra in the Pyrenees.
Oh, how fascinating. Maybe we can talk more about the monastery a little bit later. But maybe let me ask you the question. Is this monastery in any way linked to the topic we are talking today?
Not the topic specifically, but my life in this monastery has helped me to develop the kind of leadership that allows me to work in this kind of systems.
What is new organizations for you? Why do we need, or do we need new organizations? And if so, why?
Yeah, yes, we need new organizations. The problem is that the word organizations often leads us to think about very structured and very hierarchically structured organizations. No? And I think that the kind of organizations we need are different. We will need to make a big shift in our minds to understand what organizations in a new way.
Okay, sounds interesting. Let's explore that a little bit deeper in a moment. So, what about leadership? Why do we need leadership? Do we need leadership at all? And if so, why?
Leadership, we need leadership understood as service. We need leaders that they are passionate about their own truth, but they know that being convinced of their truth doesn't mean that other people don't have their own truth.
Okay. And finally, what does the word collaboration mean to you?
Well, a bunch of people that all believe that they have the truth, they are condemned to collaborate. If they don't, they will kill each other. It's just so easy.
Okay, thank you very much for these brief answers. Eugenio, you have a very fascinating topic that you chose for your input at the Berlin Change Days. It's called Intentional Transformation in Fuzzy Systems. Well, when I just read the title, probably it doesn't mean much for me, so I'm very curious to explore more. Can you give us an overview? What do you mean by intentional transformation in fuzzy systems?
Well, I will begin word by word. Intentional. My experience is that we all perceive that everything is changing in a fast pace, that we are not able to cope with that change, but it's mostly adaptative change, by which organizations and systems adapt themselves to changes in their environment or internally. No? But intentional change is very rare. A process by which an organization or even a person sets a direction and keeps that direction no matter what until it's implemented, no? That's very rare. Transformation means most of my clients hire me for something they call change, and in reality they only want maintenance, not to lose the current level of performance. They cloak it in terms of change, but it's no change. Some of them want improvement, and some of them want change, but change still in a linear way. So the way I use the word transformation is to convey the idea that we have to change the way of changing towards farther than the linear or even systemic way of thinking. We have to take a leap farther down the road than the systemic thinking. And in my opinion, that's the field theory approach that we need to work from.
Okay.
Transformation is not possible in a systemic way of thinking. Intentional transformation. No? fuzzy systems are in contrast with the well-defined and structured systems like companies, organizations, etc. Fuzzy systems are those where you never know where they begin and they end, and internally there's no entity or person that acknowledges anybody else's authority to define anything a priori.
Okay.
No? And that's most of societies and most of territories or joint ventures between equal partners, etc., etc.
Why are you interested in that topic? What made you deal with this topic, and why do you want to talk about it at the Berlin Change Days?
Well, there was during the 90s, I had the ambition to become a consultant in change management in turbulent environments, even violent environments. And I succeeded in coming to work with both organizations and multinationals working in African countries where there was a civil war raging, no? Like in Zimbabwe. And then I saw that it's impossible for these organizations to change internally without working also in the interface with their environment. No? And then that's the way I became interested. And then I don't know why, maybe God wanted me to take that step, because just because I began to think about it, I began to get assignments in that direction, no? Like working with multi-stakeholder engagement processes with multinationals in Africa, for example, and so on. No? And lately, it has been even more interesting, not as turbulent, but very interesting to get projects where I don't even know who is going to pay, because when we begin the project, nobody acknowledges anybody the right to hire anybody to help. No? And that's the fussiest thing I have been on. No? Wow. And it has cost me dearly economically, but it has been so rewarding, no, that I am enthusiastic about this field, for me, new field. No?
Wow. Eugenio, now you really made me curious. Probably for me and our listeners and readers, I think that would be the right time that you give us one or two typical examples of this work you're doing, typical examples of this fuzzy systems you're talking about.
Okay. In the top level management or officials in the United Nations system, there is a very clear insight that the usual negotiations between countries never lead to anything that is real transformational. So, for some couple of years ago or 3 years ago, there was informal discussions about how to redefine the new Millennium Development Goals, no? That should be defined for 2015. Yeah. And there were some people, I don't know who, because I never reached those levels, no? That got the idea that parallel before the official negotiations between countries began, there should be a parallel process by which there would not be any pressure, in which there would be no pressure to come to any agreements, and in which representatives for indigenous communities, the official negotiators from the different countries, and researchers would be together during a couple or 3 meetings in order to just understand each other. They didn't need to come to any agreements, only understand each other.
Maybe before we go deeper into what you do then, can you give a second example, maybe a different one?
Well, yes, I am working now in a much smaller scale, but not less complicated or complex, or not less complex, in La Garrocha, that it's a territory here in Catalonia near the Pyrenees, and where there is emergent movement towards developing a greater sustainability for the territory.
Okay.
And there are multiple actors, both from the private and the public sector and the NGOs, that want to influence this process. And this is a fuzzy system because, well, geographically you can define where the territory begins and ends because there are some lines in the maps, no? But in reality, you know, it is a so open system that you can't say where's inside and what's inside. No, so when you want to decide, when they want to agree upon interventions to promote local consumption of local produce and create value and create local value chains from production to elaboration to commercialization, etc., etc., then you don't know where. You can't just think that the territory is the geographically limits of the boundaries of the territory are the ones that you have to work within. No, at the same time, who is the one that wants to hire me, and how do they get the legitimacy to present me as a facilitator and change process designer? And who is going to put the money to pay my fees and pay all the costs of this process, no? When everybody acknowledge each other as equal partners, no? No? And this is not on the behalf of anybody, it's on the behalf of a greater whole, a greater system, no?
Okay.
And all parties are more or less and understand more or less, willingly or not, but they understand that they are working for the good of the greater whole.
Let's hear a little bit about your approach to such assignments in fuzzy systems. So what do you do?
The first thing is I help those that contact me to identify who are the stakeholders or the actors within that system, fuzzy system, that are enthusiastic about any kind of change. And how would they want to come to one or a couple of meetings to see if they are willing to work together without making any compromises about their own agendas? No? So it's not so much about making a team of change agents where they all agree on a direction, but they all agree about how different can we be and still work together. How different agendas can we have and still be operative?
Okay.
So that would be the first work, to identify this team or these people or these organizations that are willing to work for a desired future. A desired future is something that opens. An objective and a goal is something that closes the future.
Right.
So how can they define a desired future for their system where all their agendas are included? And how would that future look like? And then I train them in a way of thinking that where they can work together without compromising their own agendas. Train them in multi-partner thinking and in Trojan thinking. And that's one of my favorite projects I have. No? How can I help them to conceive themselves as Trojan horses within this fuzzy system? They have the right to push for their own agendas, while at the same time they know that at some point they will meet resistance, and at that moment they will need to enter in dialogue with the resistance to their proposals and their agenda.
Fascinating. So any other important steps you want to share with us?
Yeah, in this team there's something important, that is to oscillate all the time between the field perspective and the systemic perspective. No? Because in some way I need to help them to think as if they were outside the system they try to influence, and that would be the systemic approach. No? to how can you make a stakeholder analysis. But my experience is that in many cases, the stakeholders analysis becomes eternal and a goal in itself. So at some point, they need to plunge into the system, and then here comes the field approach, where you don't have any overall picture of the system. You are swimming in it, and the only way to influence is to interact with your peers that you have closer to yourself.
Right.
No? And to train them in this and help them as a team, as individual stakeholders, be they persons or organizations or businesses or whatever. So to train them in making this shift, help them understand when they are becoming manipulative and where they are just going transparently to further their own agenda, and how to establish dialogue with stakeholders that want something different than them, and so on. That's one of the biggest challenges in the second step. And this is before we go into the third step, that is opening what I call honey traps.
Eugenio, I see that we are already emptying your entire treasure chest, and I think we should keep our listeners and readers a little bit curious, because what you're telling us is so interesting, and I think lots of people will be interested to hear more from you. So, if we maybe towards the end of this interview talk about what you will be doing at the Berlin Change Days. Obviously, you will be talking about this approach, you will be talking about your theory, but what will people who attend your session take away from it?
I hope that great curiosity about learning more about this field, because I believe that is the field of the future. So, I think that it's a huge field. There's a huge need out there of change. No, I wouldn't say global agents of intentional transformation. That's the name I have given to this profession. No, local agents of intentional transformation, and that's what I want to dedicate the rest of my professional life to, promote this profession and to create a network of people, of peer support.
I think you've got a new follower, Eugenio.
Okay, thank you.
Eugenio,
great. Yes.
Thank you so much. This was such a fascinating interview. I can't wait having you in Berlin in November, only a few months to wait. So thanks so much for being with us now and being with us in November. Looking very much forward. Thank you, Eugenio.
Thank you, Holger, for inviting me.